The presence of one legend resonates fear in a room full of historical champions. He is Alexander the Great, the man who overturned the entire Persian Empire, transported Macedonian arms into India, and prepared the Hellenistic world of territorial kingdoms. In this video, we will be exploring the incredible life of Alexander the Great, the legendary conqueror of Egypt and Persia whose presence in nations signified defeat or terror. If you're a lover of intriguing history, you will appreciate this video. Alexander the Great was born at Pella in Macedonia in the year 356 BCE into the family of Philip II and Olympias, daughter of the king of Epirus. Aristotle mentored young Alexander from 13 to 16 and inspired his interest in philosophy, medicine, and investigations of science. However, Alexander deviated from his teacher's narrow context that believed in the enslavement of non-Greeks, and then progressed from that school of thought. During the period when his father Philip besieged Byzantium, Alexander was in charge of Macedonia, where he defeated a set of the Thracian people known as the Mede in 340. 2 years after that period, he was the commander of the left wing at the Chaeronea battle, in which his father triumphed over the allied Greek states and displayed personal courage in disbanding the Sacred Band of Thebes. The Sacred Band of Thebes at the time was an elitist military corps made up of 150 pairs of lovers. After a year, his parents divorced after a quarrel that stemmed from the feast held to celebrate Philip's marriage to his new bride. Alexander and his mother fled to Epirus, after which Alexander moved to Illyria. It didn't take long before Alexander and his father reconciled their differences, but his position as the heir was already jeopardized. Philip was assassinated in 336, and conceding military backing, Alexander succeeded as king without any opposition. When he ascended to the throne, he eliminated all the princes of Lyncestis who were allegedly instrumental to the assassination of his father, alongside any possible rival and all sides that may oppose his reign. After the executions, he proceeded to the south, where he recovered the wavering Thessaly, and in the assembly of the Greek League of Corinth, he was declared as the generalissimo for the invasion of Asia, a master plan which was already laid out by his father Philip. It was on his return to Macedonia through Delphi that the Pythian priestess described him as invisible, and he then advanced into Thrace in 335 BCE. He pressed his way through the Shipka Pass and crushed the Triballi, passing through the Danube and routing to the Getae. Alexander changed course to the west, where he crushed the stronghold of the coalition of Illyrians, who in time before had invaded Macedonia. Following the routing of his enemies, there were rumors of his death, a situation which led to a revolt of Theban Democrats. Other Greek nations partnered with Thebes, while the Athenians, urged by the Demosthenes, voted for help. In the space of 14 days, Alexander journeyed 240 miles from Pelion in Illyria to Thebes. At the insistence of the Thebes resistance, he razed their towns and the entire city to the ground while leaving only temples and the Pindar's house, and the survivors were enslaved. This action left the other Greek state in submission, and it was then a walkthrough with leading the Athenians. Following this was the establishment of Macedonian garrisons in Corinth, Chalcis, and the citadel of Thebes, Cadmea. The Persian expedition has been a central interest to Alexander. He grew up with the idea and desired to rally through Persia. Moreover, the wealth of Persia was necessary for him if he must maintain the great army that his father Philip had built, and settle his debt of 500 talent. The vulnerability of the Persian Empire was revealed when Alexander exploited the 10,000 soldiers of fortune and the Agesilaus of Sparta. Following his discovery, Alexander, with any powerful cavalry, was able to defeat any army of Persia. In the spring of 334 BCE, Alexander went over the Dardanelles, leaving Antipater, one of the faithful men who served with Philip as a deputy with over 13,000 men under his command. Alexander himself commanded over 30,000 foot soldiers and over 5,000 cavalry. In the army, some of them were Macedonians, about 14,000 in all, and 7,000 allies appointed by the Greek League. This army would prove to be the right balance his army needed with the right combination of arms, some of whom were the light-armed Cretans, Macedonian archers, some Thracians, and the javelin men of Agrian. However, in tougher battles, the cavalry was the strategic army used, and it enlisted several military men skilled in several arms and strategic units. In June 334 BCE, Alexander confronted his first Persian army. This Persian army was led by 3 satraps who planned to eliminate Alexander across the melee, but as the Persian line got broken, Alexander's victory was complete. The Darius-led Greek mercenaries were greatly eliminated in battle, the tyrants routed, and the democracies enacted. Alexander's victory over Persia also involved his appointment of leaders around strategic regions in the realm, occupying the coastal lands and sending all his enemies packing. His expedition in Persia was strategic, and he didn't fail in the execution of his father's plan to overthrow the Persian realm. In the winter between 334 and 333 BCE, Alexander went ahead to conquer Asia Minor, the western part, where he subdued the Lycia and Pisidia tribes. He also advanced to the coastal lines of Perga, passing through the top of the mountain into Phrygia Gordium. At Phrygia, it was recorded in history that Alexander did cut the Gordian knot, which interestingly showed the tenacity of the man capable of ruling Asia. From Phrygia, Alexander went up to Cappadocia and then to Cilicia. On the other side, Darius's army had encamped and drawn up for battle along the Panaris River against Alexander. Alexander won a decisive victory. This victory led to a Persian uprising which made Darius flee, leaving his women with Alexander, though they were treated with chivalrous care. From Issus, Alexander moved down south to Syria and Phoenicia, intending to destroy its fleet base, thereby hitting the Persian army with a very brute force. The Phoenician city sent emissaries ahead to plead with Alexander to embrace peace, but he would have none of it. He intended to bring the entire Persian kingdom to its knees. He repeated the wrongs of Greece and demanded that they submit to him unconditionally as the Lord of Asia. After defeating Byblos and Sidon, he went further to Tyre, but was met with a resistant tribe who resided in his entry into the city. He deployed all his antics to besiege the city, but was held for over 7 months by the Tyrians. In all of this, the Persians had returned to fight Antigonus, the satrap of Phrygia, thereby reclaiming several other cities and islands. On the flip side, Darius returned with a higher offer to Alexander, which entails that he gives up his estates in the western Euphrates. But Alexander wasn't interested. He further kept on pressing against Tyre, which he later captured. Storming Tyre would be Alexander's greatest military achievement. It was devastating carnage, coupled with the selling of women and children into slavery. Leaving Parmenio, the land of the Tyrians, he furthered down the south with no strong opposition until he met with tough resistance at the high grounds of Gaza. During this resistance, he got a shoulder wound. With this, he retired to Jerusalem for a season. In November 332 BCE, Alexander arrived in Egypt and was welcomed by the high and mighty in the land who gladly surrendered. What a wise escape from the carnage that would have befallen the nation. He settled a bit in Egypt and sacrificed to Apis, the Egyptian bull god at Memphis, wearing the traditional robe of the pharaoh. The traditional priests were encouraged and their religion was recognized. Alexander would spend the winter of the same year organizing Egypt. He installed leaders strategically and sought to find a lasting solution to the economy of the land by investigating the cause of the Nile's reduced flow. Alexander's capture of Egypt was the boost needed to subdue the entire Mediterranean coast. He gained total control of the eastern part of the Mediterranean coast, where he also installed satraps to do his bidding. He further went into Babylon and captured the realm. He wreaked havoc on the land, destroying the palace and worship places, and made the nation submit to him. However, he was waging a personal war here away from the entire war roadmap that his father Philip had designed. Soon, Darius of Persia died, and it left the room open for Alexander to be the great king with the Rhodian inscription signifying him as the Lord of Asia. He seized many nations thereafter, including Central Asia and other stronger nations in the Persian realm. India was next on Alexander's list. He reorganized his army in 327 BCE, crossed the Hindu Kush, and besieged India. In his expedition, he went about strategically desecrating their holy places, hitting hard on their leaders, and instituting his preferred worship style. He sent terror through the land by eliminating governors who wouldn't concede and installing his satraps. He was an example of war in tough places and a terror anywhere he was mentioned. He fought wars across the globe and was only king for 12 years and 8 months. Such feats could only be delivered by Alexander. It was in Babylon while he was strategizing on how to improve the Euphrates irrigation that he fell sick, and 10 days later in June 323 BCE he died. His body was retrieved and brought back to Egypt by Ptolemy, who placed Alexander's body in a golden coffin. Throughout all empires, he was still respected as the great king whose presence and actions were felt throughout the earthly empires, even though he died without an heir to the throne.